Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, and welcome to another weekend book review. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
Imagine a company, a giant like Xerox, and it has this research center, PRRRs. It was just, well, it was practically inventing the future.
Right. Things we take for granted now.
Exactly. Like the graphical user interface,
Yeah.
The computer mouse, Ethernet, even laser printing, all born right there inside Xerox PRC.
Regrettable breakthroughs.
Truly. But here's the twist, and it's really fascinating. Most of these groundbreaking inventions, they never actually made it to market from Xerox itself.
Yeah, that's the amazing part of the story.
Think about it. They had like 35 projects reach a certain stage, but internal funding. It got stopped for 30 of them. 30.
Wow.
But instead of just burying them, Xerox did something pretty radical, especially for that time. They actively encouraged the employees on those projects to leave, to take their inventions out into the external market.
Which seems so counterintuitive at first glance.
Right. But the logic was, once those brilliant people left, that budget was freed up. It could be put toward something more strategic, more aligned with Xerox's core business right then.
So it wasn't about the ideas being bad, but about strategic focus.
Precisely. And this move, it really highlights a huge shift in how innovation can happen. It acknowledges that sometimes really valuable ideas need to thrive outside the place they were born.
And what's really insightful there is how perfectly that story just captures the core idea we're talking about today, that innovation doesn't always have to happen entirely within a company's walls.
Yeah.
It's, a foundational concept that really reshaped how we understand the flow of ideas, both coming into and going out of organizations. It kind of opened the floodgates.
And that strategic flow of ideas, that's exactly what we're going to explore today. We're digging into a truly foundational text, especially if you're interested in business, tech, how innovation actually works.
Yeah.
The Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation.
A massive piece of work.
It really is. Meticulously edited by Professor Henry Chesbrough and his whole esteemed team of editors. It's just an indispensable resource.
Yeah.
Especially valuable, I think, for those of you listening who are maybe just starting your own academic research journey, or perhaps just beginning to think seriously about how ideas move through the world.
Yeah, this handbook, it's much more than just a collection of papers. It's like a meticulously crafted guide. It's just brimming with insights from, a huge range of leading scholars and, importantly, seasoned practitioners, too.
Right.
So while our conversation today, we'll definitely touch on the key concepts, try to give you a structured overview, the original book itself offers a depth, a richness. It genuinely merits your time. It really makes you think.
Absolutely. This isn't just a quick summary. So look, whether or not you decide to subscribe here, we genuinely, truly urge you to make time to delve into this thoughtfully crafted original book.
It's worth it.
It really is a resource that keeps on giving. Offering perspectives that stick with you long after you first read it. It'll undoubtedly become a cornerstone for your thinking. And you'll find the link to it right there in our show notes. Okay, so let's really unpack this whole concept of open innovation. For a very, very long time, the dominant idea in business, celebrated by scholars like Alfred Chandler and his big work Scale and Scope, was what we now call closed innovation.
Yeah, the traditional model.
Exactly. The belief was, basically, that a company's internal R&D was its ultimate weapon, its key competitive advantage. Firms were like self-contained innovation factories.
Everything under one roof.
Yeah. They kept everything in-house. They believed their smartest people worked only for them. Any innovation they discovered, they developed it entirely themselves, shipped it themselves, controlled the whole process, cradle to grave.
Think of like the old Bell Labs model, maybe, or parts of IBM's history.
Perfect examples. The core idea was keep knowledge proprietary, keep it internal. That's the key to winning. Actually, research back in the 80s, like David Mallory's work, showed how these internal R&D labs grew, specifically because they're often just cheaper and more efficient to do innovation internally than rely on messy external markets.
Right. And any accidental sharing of knowledge, what academics call spillovers, that was seen as, basically a cost, something to be minimized, avoided if possible.
Right, definitely. But what's fascinating here is how that traditional view, which was super efficient for its time, maybe for certain industries like chemicals or early electronics, it started to show cracks as the world changed.
Yeah, it didn't fully account for something crucial. The sheer acceleration, the explosion, really, of external knowledge creation happening everywhere. Suddenly, innovation wasn't just about piling up knowledge inside your own walls. It became much more about strategically tapping into, accessing, and leveraging this much, much wider world of ideas and expertise out there.
It's that old assumption.
That assumption that all the smartest people work for us, it just started to crumble. We entered what Chesbrough calls a knowledge-rich world. You have this massive increase in potential innovation triggers popping up from countless sources outside any single company. Universities, startups, individual inventors, even customers.
Ideas were everywhere.
Everywhere.
So, okay, this accelerating pace of external knowledge, what did it mean for how companies actually do innovation? Professor Henry Chesbrough, seeing this big shift, he coined the term open innovation back in 2003.
The term that really defined this new era.
Right. And at its heart, open innovation is really about purposefully managing knowledge flows across organizational boundaries. It's not accidental, it's deliberate.
Yeah.
It's basically a pragmatic recognition that, like the saying goes, most of the smartest people work someplace else.
It's accepting that reality.
Exactly. And this paradigm shift forces companies to totally rethink how they create value, how they capture value, moving away from that fortress mentality towards something more permeable, more interconnected.
Which brings us to a really crucial question, especially for you if you're a new researcher just starting out. How do firms effectively integrate these external and internal ideas to, speed up innovation and maybe expand into new markets?
Right, that's the practical challenge.
And the handbook, it meticulously lays out 3 core modes or types of open innovation. Understanding these is really your foundational first step. They give you a structure, a way to categorize and analyze how companies are actually interacting with their external environment.
Okay, so what's the first one?
First up, we have outside-in innovation, sometimes called inbound innovation. This one is probably the most intuitive. It's all about bringing external ideas and knowledge into the firm.
So sourcing from the outside.
Exactly. Think of it as deliberately sourcing knowledge from the wider world. And this is probably the most widely recognized and certainly the most researched area within open innovation studies.
Makes sense.
But it's not just about finding stuff out there. It's about systematically absorbing it, integrating it with what the company already knows, its existing expertise, and then, crucially, adapting it to fit the current strategy.
So it's active process.
Very active. Examples range from, leveraging user innovations, like when companies watch how customers modify their products, all the way to using crowdsourcing platforms where firms post specific challenges for a global community of problem solvers.
Like an incentive, maybe?
Precisely. Or companies might get involved in strategic alliances. They might acquire startups specifically for their tech or talent, or set up corporate venture capital arms, CVCs, all with the goal of tapping into these external innovation pipelines.
Yeah, and you see big companies like Procter & Gamble really embracing this, or Enel, the global energy company. They've become masters of this outside-in approach.
How so with Enel?
Well, Enel, for instance, doesn't just look for new technologies randomly. They strategically learn from external experiments happening in green and renewable energy. They've set up these innovation outposts in global hotspots, Silicon Valley, Tel Aviv, Boston.
Embedding themselves.
Exactly. Not just to invest money, but to get an early look, a feel for nascent business models, new technologies bubbling up. This proactive scouting helps them stay right at the forefront of renewables by sourcing diverse knowledge way faster than they could possibly generate it all internally.
That really speaks to the core belief, doesn't it? That in a world overflowing with ideas, being really skilled at seeking out, engaging with, spreading internally, and then deeply absorbing that external knowledge, that's paramount for staying competitive.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's outside in. What's the next mode?
Next, we have inside-out innovation, or outbound innovation. This mode flips the script. It focuses on commercializing innovations developed internally, but doing it externally.
Letting ideas leave the nest, so to speak.
Exactly. This often happens through things like licensing out intellectual property, IP, spinning off new ventures based on internal tech, or even, in some cases, freely revealing innovations without immediate payment, maybe to help grow an ecosystem that benefits the company later.
Like the Xerox PRs example we started with.
Perfect illustration. That's classic inside out. It's about recognizing, hey, not every brilliant idea we cook up internally actually fits our current core business or our strategic priorities right now.
Yeah.
So outbound innovation gives companies a kind of graceful way to stop funding R&D projects that are no longer central, but still get significant value from them. It prevents that valuable knowledge from just sitting on a shelf gathering dust.
Which is actually quite brilliant strategically when you think about it. I mean, look at Philips, the Dutch electronics giant.
What did they do?
Well, at various points, they actively encouraged employees to spin off projects and technologies that maybe didn't align anymore as Philips shifted, say, from consumer electronics more towards healthcare tech.
Right.
This strategy not only gave Philips a clear way to cut funding for R&D they deemed less useful for their future path, but it also empowered the employees themselves. They could follow their projects to market instead of just abandoning them.
That's a powerful motivator.
Totally. It embraces the idea that speed and agility are key, letting unused ideas just sit there. That's a huge waste of potential value. It can even let firms influence how complementary technologies develop out in the market, which might eventually help their own core stuff down the line.
That's a really subtle but important strategic angle.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have outside in, inside out.
Right.
What's the third mode?
That leads us to coupled innovation.
Okay.
This is where it gets really interactive. Coupled innovation is basically a dynamic combination of both the inbound and outbound approaches. It involves active, two-way knowledge flows and really deep, sustained collaboration throughout the whole innovation process.
So not just a one-off transaction.
Definitely not. Unlike simple buyer-seller deals, coupled innovation is often built on strong, interactive partnerships. The focus is on jointly creating new knowledge and value that, ideally, benefits everyone involved.
Right.
This mode is especially relevant when you're tackling really complex systemic challenges, problems that require such diverse expertise and resources that no single company could possibly possess at all. It's truly an ecosystem approach.
Can you give an example of that kind of deep coupled approach?
Yeah, a really compelling one, especially for radical systemic change, is Carlsberg's development of its green fiber bottle.
Ah, the paper bottle idea.
Exactly. This was not a project Carlsberg could just do with its traditional R&D. It absolutely required an entire innovation ecosystem, going way beyond just direct collaboration with a couple of suppliers.
So who was involved?
It involved diverse innovators from totally different industries, orchestrators to kind of guide the whole process, and even complex arrangements for managing technology ownership involving parties whose main business wasn't brewing beer at all.
Wow, that's complex.
It really highlights how big strategic opportunities are sometimes pursued with partners who have skills and resources way outside the main company's core competence. Similarly, you could look at KLM's Sky NRD initiative for sustainable aviation fuel, another perfect example of this multi-stakeholder, ecosystem-level coupled innovation. The problem is just so huge, only a shared effort can make a dent.
That makes sense. So for someone starting their research journey, really understanding these three fundamental modes, outside in, inside out, and coupled, that's the first crucial step in analyzing innovation.
Absolutely. It helps you categorize, it helps you analyze how companies or even, research institutions or nonprofits interact with their external world.
Yeah, it lets you move beyond just asking, is this company open? Which is kind of a blunt question.
Right.
Instead, you can ask, how is it open? What specific mechanisms are they using? What kind of value are they trying to create or capture? It's a much more powerful framework for actually observing and understanding these really complex innovation dynamics in the real world.
Okay, here's where it gets, I think, really fascinating. As organizations start to really embrace these open innovation principles, the traditional roles of the individuals inside those organizations, they start to transform pretty dramatically.
Yeah, it's not just about the organization changing, it's about the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It becomes less about, the lone genius toiling away in some isolated lab, and much more about skilled integrators, people who can fluidly bridge different worlds, the internal world of the company and the external world of ideas.
The boundary spanners.
Precisely. The whole career model for an innovator starts to shift. It's less of a straight line focused only on climbing the internal ladder, and more dynamic, more fluid. External relationships, the ability to actually find and extract value from outside knowledge, those become increasingly vital skills.
You're absolutely right. And initially, many of the people who really excelled in these new outward-facing roles, they might have just kind of self-selected into them. Maybe they were operating as sort of jacks of all trades, doing a bit of everything across the innovation spectrum.
Right, the early pioneers.
Yeah. But the handbook points out a really significant shift happening now, these open innovation roles. They're becoming much more formalized, more institutionalized within companies.
What does that mean exactly?
It means that instead of only rewarding the person who generates the brilliant internal idea, organizations are starting to formally recognize and give credit to individuals for developing new external relationships, for being good at knowledge absorption, for actually extracting tangible value from ideas that came from outside the firm.
So it's changing the reward systems and structures.
Fundamentally, it signals a real change in organizational structure and how talent is valued.
So as you dive into this area, if you're researching this, you'll often come across terms like gatekeepers or assimilators.
Key roles.
Definitely. These aren't just buzzwords. They represent really critical individual functions. These are the folks who have this unique dual capability.
Yeah.
They don't just identify valuable external knowledge, but they also work really hard to diffuse it, to translate it internally, making sure it connects with the organization's actual needs and capabilities.
Like Alan's classic work from the 70s showed, right, they need that 1 foot inside and 1 foot outside.
Exactly. They need extensive internal networks to know where to plug that external knowledge in, who needs it, and extensive external networks to scout for the solutions in the first place. It's a bridging role.
And to be really effective in these kinds of hybrid roles, individuals need a specific mix of skills. They need broad technological knowledge or domain knowledge, and a really deep, nuanced understanding of their own organization, its culture, its politics, its strategic priorities.
You can't just be an outsider looking in.
No. And research actually shows that the synergies between identifying and assimilating external knowledge are crucial. For example, studies have found that individuals who successfully combine both active scouting and effective internal integration, they're consistently rated by their companies as making more valuable contributions to the overall innovation output.
So it's not just finding it, it's landing it internally.
Precisely. And this role goes beyond just, say, a university liaison or a technology scout. It covers a much broader range of activities across that whole knowledge absorption process, from spotting an idea to actually seeing it applied inside.
Okay, but this brings up a really common and very real challenge. What happens when the internal teams are resistant? When they don't want ideas from the outside?
Yes. The classic barrier.
The handbook highlights this pervasive phenomenon known as the not invented here syndrome, or NIH.
Right.
And it's not just people being stubborn, is it? It often stems from something deeper, like a very human tendency, psychological ownership over the ideas generated internally.
Yeah, exactly. Scientists, for instance, they might feel that seeking solutions outside is like admitting failure or suggesting their own team isn't capable enough. That can create a huge psychological barrier to even looking outside.
That makes sense. It's about identity, too.
It absolutely is. And you've hit on another critical point. Managers' risk aversion often plays a big role here, too. They frequently prefer ideas that seem less novel, less risky. So they might be wary of external knowledge that seems unfamiliar or, as the handbook puts it, poorly maps onto the existing internal structures.
Because it feels disruptive or hard to integrate.
Precisely. So overcoming NIH syndrome, it requires more than just finding a great external idea. It demands really strategic reframing, repackaging that external knowledge to make it more palatable, more internally legitimate.
How do you do that?
It's about presenting those external solutions not as threats, but maybe as complements or ways to accelerate internal efforts, sometimes even transforming them into what feel like internal wins. This is actually where future research could be incredibly valuable, looking at the detailed processes, the political skills individuals use to champion external ideas internally.
Okay, so for your research compass in this area, the message is clear. When you analyze innovation, look beyond just the company structure. Look at the people within it.
Yes.
How do individuals actually bridge that gap between internal and external knowledge? What specific characteristics, maybe their knowledge diversity from different backgrounds or jobs, shape the firm's openness? And what really motivates them, or what hurdles get in their way? Understanding these micro-foundations, the individual level, is absolutely key to grasping how open innovation succeeds or fails. Okay, so if the whole point of open innovation is about intentionally letting valuable ideas and knowledge flow across the boundaries of the organization, then a really critical question pops up immediately, which: how do companies manage the risk? I mean, the risk of sharing what they've created, potentially losing control. It can't just be a free-for-all, right?
Absolutely not. It's definitely not a free-for-all. It's actually a very deliberate, very carefully managed design choice.
Okay, so it's design.
Precisely. And the handbook explains that designing this innovation openness gets incredibly complex, especially when you're dealing with technologies or product systems that have lots of intricate interdependencies between different parts.
Yeah, I could see that.
It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, it involves carefully combining several critical elements together. The company's technological architecture, how its products or systems are built, its intellectual property or IP strategies, and the specific contractual agreements it puts in place with partners.
So it's like a toolkit of controls.
Exactly. This holistic approach is absolutely essential for striking that balance between wanting broad collaboration and the fundamental need to protect core assets and actually capture some value from it all. And for you, as a new researcher, this really highlights how previously distinct areas, like just managing patents, have expanded. It's not just about defending IP anymore, it's about actively enabling knowledge trading activities.
Okay, so let's break that down. What's a key design element here? You mentioned technological architecture.
Right. Think about modular technological architecture. How does this help? Well, if you design a system, say a complex piece of software in a modular way, each component can function somewhat independently.
Like building blocks.
Exactly. This design choice helps define what technology gets shared versus what's strategically kept internal, kept proprietary. It reduces the amount of coordination needed between different teams working on different modules, making collaboration on specific parts much easier without exposing the entire secret sauce.
Makes sense.
And crucially, modularity sets a clear limit on what technology is actually shared. It helps prevent sensitive core technologies from leaking out by keeping them contained within specific closed modules. It also means if an open innovation effort on one module fails, the negative impact is limited to just that module, which can hopefully be replaced or redesigned relatively cheaply. It's all about creating controlled interfaces.
Okay, that makes sense. How does IP fit into managing leakage?
Indeed, this idea of modularity is critical for managing potential technology leakage, and IP plays a key role. Consider a hypothetical example the handbook discusses. A patented component, let's call it A4.
Okay.
If Company A licenses this component A4 to Company B, it can do so using very specific field of use clauses in the contract.
What does that mean?
It means Company B might only be allowed to use component A4 for, say, mobile phone applications, but explicitly not for medical devices, for example. That protects Company A's other potential markets. Additionally, contracts often include grant-back clauses. This ensures that if Company B happens to make any future improvements or innovations based on A4, Company A, the original patent holder, automatically benefits from those improvements, or at least gains access to them.
Ah, clever.
It's very clever legal structuring. It ensures that while knowledge is shared and collaboration is enabled, the original owner still captures value and, really importantly, maintains its freedom to operate, meaning it can keep developing and selling its own products without accidentally infringing on IP developed by its partners based on its original tech.
So the balance here sounds incredibly delicate. On one side, you need to enable this knowledge trading, foster collaboration.
Which is essential for open innovation.
Right. But on the other side, you absolutely must protect your core assets and make sure you can capture enough value from the innovations that come out of these collaborations.
It requires a highly strategic, often dynamic approach to intellectual property. It's not static.
And that brings up a really important question for companies, especially maybe those building platform ecosystems, like an app store or an operating system.
Yeah, platforms are a great example.
How do they decide when to actually assert their IP rights versus when to maybe waive them or be more lenient, specifically to foster cooperative value creation within their ecosystem?
That's the million-dollar question for platform owners. And the handbook notes this fascinating paradox. While a certain level of openness is absolutely necessary for platforms to thrive, you need it to attract developers, complementary innovators being too open can actually backfire.
How so?
It can prevent the platform owners from effectively steering their ecosystems, guiding development, or capturing enough revenue to sustain their own R&D and keep the platform evolving.
You give an example.
Sure. Think about Atari back in the 1980s. They didn't implement effective lockout mechanisms for their game console. What happened? A flood of low-quality, unlicensed games hit the market, which ultimately tarnished Atari's brand and diminished the whole platform's value. Or maybe consider Red Hat Linux in the 90s. Its very open license was key to widespread adoption, fantastic for market share, but it also made it inherently difficult for Red Hat to capture sufficient revenue directly from its core product because customers could freely use and redistribute the code.
Right.
These cases really powerfully underscore this openness paradox, that inherent risk of value being expropriated or diluted if openness isn't managed with extreme care and strategic foresight.
So for your toolkit as a new researcher analyzing this stuff, your analysis needs to go beyond just asking, is this company open? Yes or no?
That's too simplistic.
Exactly. Instead, ask, how is it open? What precise mechanisms, architectural, contractual, IP-based, are actually in place to manage that openness? And what specific safeguards are protecting its value? Getting a nuanced understanding of this deliberate design of openness is absolutely essential for any robust analysis of innovation today. Okay, so we've talked about individual firms bringing ideas in or letting them out, and even designing how they do that. But now, let's zoom out a bit. Open innovation really comes alive, doesn't it, at the intersection of organizational boundaries, especially when multiple firms start collaborating.
Absolutely. We're moving beyond just one company's efforts or even a simple one-to-one exchange. This is where dynamic partnerships form, complex webs of collaboration, often stretching across traditional competitive lines.
Right. And the handbook highlights that this among firms level of open innovation, it involves a whole rich tapestry of different collaborative forms.
Yes, it explicitly dedicates an entire section, part 3 of the handbook, just to this. It covers everything from your standard strategic alliances and joint ventures, all the way to that really intriguing concept of co-opetition.
Collaborating with competitors.
Exactly. And it also looks at the growing roles of things like accelerators and corporate venturing units in facilitating these multi-firm interactions.
So it's fundamentally about understanding how organizations leverage these wider external networks, moving beyond just simple pairs of companies, to tackle really ambitious innovation goals that would probably be impossible to achieve alone.
Precisely. It's where the multiplayer game of innovation truly unfolds.
And what's really critical here, and often quite fascinating, is that for these multi-firm collaborations to actually work effectively, it seems like the soft factors, things like trust and fairness, become absolutely paramount.
Hugely important.
The handbook points out that roughly half of all the studies they reviewed on the ethics surrounding open innovation specifically emphasize fairness and just how profoundly important it is in these interorganizational relationships.
It's not just about the contracts and the IP, it's about shared norms, mutual understanding, a sense of equity, and indeed the very nature of open innovation being multi-level, involving multiple forms of partnership, multiple directions of knowledge flow, makes it a natural setting where trust plays an exceptionally crucial, yet often quite fragile role.
Fragile how?
Well, think about it. When there's high uncertainty involved in these projects, which there often is, and when contracts are inherently incomplete, you can't possibly specify every eventuality in a complex innovation effort.
Right.
The risk of opportunistic behavior, someone taking advantage, goes up.
Yeah.
This makes building trust absolutely essential for mitigating that risk and fostering genuinely productive collaboration.
So how do firms build trust quickly, especially for complex, fast projects?
That's a great question. How do they build swift trust, as it's sometimes called? The handbook actually cites a fascinating example, case beta, where they saw different forms of trust working together. There was interpersonal trust, built through personal relationships between individuals.
Okay.
But also impersonal trust, derived more from reputation, formal structures, maybe shared industry norms. And the combination of these helped a team implement a really new, complex concept in just 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
It demonstrates that quickly establishing strong trust through multiple mechanisms can dramatically speed up complex, time-sensitive tasks.
Okay, so this brings us to maybe the most intriguing and perhaps counterintuitive form of collaboration you mentioned, co-opetition.
Yes.
What does this really mean? Collaborating with your direct rivals, it sounds inherently risky.
Yeah.
How do you cooperate with someone you're also fighting against in the marketplace every day?
It is, without a doubt, a very delicate balancing act. The handbook explains that engaging in open innovation with direct competitors significantly increases that openness paradox we talked about earlier.
Because you have to show your cards, essentially.
Exactly. To collaborate effectively, firms must reveal some knowledge to their rivals, which inevitably makes them vulnerable to imitation or having their ideas expropriated. It's a real risk.
But companies still do it.
They do, because the handbook also strongly emphasizes that just because there are competitive dimensions, it doesn't automatically rule out collaboration. Instead, co-opetition requires considerable managerial attention, real effort.
Like what kind of effort?
Well, companies employ specific strategies. They might strategically apply for patents to protect certain core aspects of the technology, even while sharing other parts. Or they might focus on establishing a significant market lead time through super rapid development and deployment, which gives them an advantage even if some technology details leak out.
So it's calculated risk.
It's a very deliberate, calculated choice. They engage in collaboration even with rivals because they recognize that the potential mutual benefits, maybe solving a huge industry-wide problem or developing a common standard everyone needs, can sometimes far outweigh those risks. But it demands sophisticated management principles, things like carefully separating competitive activities from cooperative ones, co-managing the shared project effectively, and being really thoughtful about integrating any resulting knowledge back into their respective firms.
Okay, so your research challenge here, if you're looking into this area, is to really explore that delicate dance, the interplay of trust and risk in multi-firm innovation.
Yeah.
How do companies truly manage those inherent tensions when they cooperate with competitors? How do they balance the need to share knowledge with the critical need to protect their competitive edge? And what specific mechanisms, maybe beyond just the legal contracts, do they put in place to ensure fair value capture and keep the collaboration going? That seems like a rich area.
Absolutely. It's complex and fascinating.
The whole idea of open innovation, it really expands, doesn't it? It kind of comes into its own when we look beyond just a few partners or even co-opetition, and we zoom out to think about entire ecosystems of innovation.
Right. These vast interconnected networks, they stretch way beyond the traditional boundaries of a single firm. They encompass multiple organizations, institutions, maybe even individual contributors.
Yeah, and you've hit on a really critical distinction there. These ecosystems, they're not just about creating value together. They also present these significant, ongoing challenges in how that value ultimately gets distributed, how it gets shared among all the different members.
That's a key tension.
Both open innovation thinking and ecosystem perspectives, they deeply acknowledge the benefits of joint value creation, but they're equally concerned with the inherent difficulties of value capture.
Yeah, who gets what slice of the pie?
Exactly. For instance, research suggests that the technology leaders within an ecosystem, maybe the platform owner, might disproportionately benefit from innovation happening upstream, maybe from their suppliers or complementers. It highlights that value distribution is rarely equal or automatic among all the members. Understanding those power dynamics is really crucial.
Definitely. And we're talking about various types of ecosystems here, aren't we?
We are. For example, you have platform ecosystems, which seem most common in the ICT sector, information and communications technology.
Right, like Android or iOS.
Exactly. They organize around technical interoperability standards. That shared standard allows countless external developers to create complementary innovations apps, devices, in a decentralized way. But the handbook also discusses how, say, low-tech, small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, they could effectively use coupled open innovation too, maybe through partnerships with government-funded projects to improve their productivity or efficiency.
So it's not just a high-tech game.
Not at all. It demonstrates that open innovation applies to a much wider range of industries and company sizes than just the big tech giants.
And that broad applicability, it raises an important question. How does innovation actually differ across specific industries, or what academics sometimes call sectoral systems of innovation?
Right. Does it look different in healthcare versus, say, automotive?
Exactly. The handbook delves into this, using healthcare as a prime example. In biotech, for instance, they show how the traditional sources of innovation broadened dramatically. It wasn't just internal R&D in big pharma companies anymore. Universities became huge players, as did these nimble, research-intensive small firms, often called new biotechnology firms, or NBFs.
The source is diversified.
Hugely. And interestingly, in healthcare, in licensing that's bringing external technology into the firm seems significantly more popular than outbound open innovation, especially for the large, established pharmaceutical firms.
Why is that?
It seems to indicate a stronger reliance on strategically sourcing external innovation, buying or licensing discoveries from universities or NBFs, rather than spinning out their own internal discoveries as much.
Okay, interesting. And it's not just about industry dynamics either, is it? geography plays a big role too.
A profound role. The handbook examines how entrepreneurial ecosystems differ from the more traditional idea of regional clusters. And it highlights how that spatial context, the local social environment, really influences a new venture's tendency to engage in open innovation.
What's the difference between a cluster and an entrepreneurial ecosystem?
It's a subtle but important distinction. While regional clusters, like Silicon Valley historically, primarily focus on the geographic concentration of firms and institutions and how proximity helps knowledge flow.
Right, bumping into people.
Kind of. Entrepreneurial ecosystems, on the other hand, have a more specific and dynamic aim. They are often intentionally designed or nurtured to accelerate new businesses leanly and agilely.
So focus on startups.
Very much so. These ecosystems actively foster innovative startups by involving a distinct set of key actors, yes, the high-growth ventures themselves, but also experienced mentors, specialized advisors, crucial anchor tenants, large firms that provide demand or support, and investors. It highlights that the unique engine for entrepreneurial opportunity is intrinsic to these ecosystems, specifically emphasizing rapid new business creation and the proactive chase for opportunities.
So it's a different flavor of geographic concentration.
Exactly. It's a crucial distinction for understanding the different forms and goals of organizing innovation in a specific place.
Okay, so the takeaway here for your research is to use a wider lens. Consider the broader context. Is the innovation you're studying just a simple two-partner relationship, or is it embedded within a larger evolving ecosystem? Is it being profoundly shaped by regional dynamics, like being in one of these entrepreneurial ecosystems, or by specific industry sector norms like we saw in healthcare? Understanding these broader structures just provides a much richer, much more accurate analytical framework for your work. All right, if you're a new researcher, you've definitely heard about crowdsourcing. I mean, it's everywhere, from Kickstarter campaigns to things like Wikipedia. But how does this seemingly very modern phenomenon actually fit into a strategic approach to innovation for established companies? And how does it connect back to these broader open innovation principles we've been discussing?
That's an excellent question, because it's easy to see crowdsourcing as just, throwing a problem out there. But the handbook presents a really comprehensive and very useful typology, a way of categorizing crowdsourcing strategies.
Okay, how does it break them down?
It uses two key dimensions. First, the level of interaction between the solvers, the people participating. Is it a competitive contest where lots of people submit solutions and maybe one or a few win? Or is it a collaborative community where participants work together, maybe building on each other's ideas towards a common goal?
Contest versus community. Got it. What's the second dimension?
The second is the type of technical expertise being sought. Is the company looking for solutions to highly specific technical problems? Or is it seeking broader, more open-ended ideation, maybe new product concepts?
Okay. Problem solving versus idea generation.
Exactly. And when you combine these, you get a spectrum of possibilities. At one end, you have platforms like Incentive hosting those technical challenges for a global pool of experts. And companies like the pharmaceutical giant Lilly reportedly saw an impressive 20-to-1 cost-benefit ratio for solutions they got that way.
Wow, that's significant.
Definitely. But at the other end, you have things like crowd science communities, like Zooniverse, which tackles huge scientific challenges like analyzing telescope data or transcribing historical documents through the collective efforts of citizen scientists.
So it's a really diverse toolkit.
It is. It shows that crowdsourcing isn't just one thing. It's a diverse set of approaches for tapping into that external collective intelligence.
Now, it's truly fascinating how crowds can generate just an immense number of ideas, right? Offering this incredible volume of potential solutions. But here's the challenge that often gets overlooked, I think.
What's that?
The real difficulty for companies isn't just generating all those ideas, it's then effectively selecting the most promising ones and actually implementing them, especially if you get thousands of submissions.
Yeah.
How do you even process that?
You've highlighted the selection paradox perfectly. And firms often react by retaining really stringent control over the idea selection process, which, offers obvious advantages. You can ensure strategic alignment, maintain quality control, but that centralized control can also have big disadvantages. It might limit the potential for truly disruptive or way out-of-the-box external ideas to actually get embraced, simply because they don't neatly fit the existing internal ways of thinking.
Right. The really novel stuff might get screened out.
Exactly. The firm mode of selection gives you control, but you risk overlooking transformative ideas or just getting completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume. And the handbook also touches on another maybe more subtle but powerful crowdsourcing strategy.
What's that?
Firms can strategically sponsor or nurture communities that develop and even give away compliments that ultimately benefit the firm's core products.
Give me an example.
Think of a software company that supports an open source community building plugins or integrations for its main proprietary software. Here, the firm isn't directly paying for solutions, but it's nurturing an ecosystem of external contributors whose collective output makes the firm's own offerings more valuable.
Leveraging user innovation indirectly.
Precisely. It's about fostering a thriving external knowledge ecosystem around your core business, even if those contributions aren't directly monetized by the firm itself.
Okay, so given all these complexities, managing the input, the selection paradox, different models like contests versus communities, what does this mean for companies that are struggling to actually harness this collective intelligence effectively? It sounds like it could be pretty daunting without some help.
That's exactly where the emergence of open innovation intermediaries becomes so important. The handbook details how these specialized service providers offer really essential support to firms wanting to engage with the outside.
What kind of support?
They provide dedicated tools and platforms, established processes for running challenges or managing communities, education and consulting on best practices, and maybe most importantly, access to their pre-vetted networks of potential external contributors and knowledge providers.
So they handle the logistics and find the right people.
In many cases, yes. Their dominant service type, historically anyway, has been managing those crowdsourcing contests, acting as crucial delegated search mechanisms for firms. Find me a solution to this problem.
Right.
However, it's worth noting an intriguing trend the handbook mentions. The actual volume of these crowdsourcing contests seems to have shown a decreasing trend since a peak around 2015.
Oh, really? Why might that be?
Well, the handbook doesn't give a definitive answer, but it suggests an evolution in the market for this kind of support. Perhaps companies are trying different methods, or maybe the initial hype around contests faded slightly. It definitely signals a need for continued research into why crowdsourcing hasn't been adopted maybe as widely or strategically as many people initially expected.
Interesting. So your research inspiration from this part should be, how can firms, or maybe even your own research project, effectively harness the immense power of these diverse external groups? What are the hidden pitfalls beyond just idea selection? And what are the evolving trends in these crucial engagement mechanisms, especially as the landscape of external intelligence, digital platforms, and AI keeps shifting so rapidly?
Yeah.
It's just undeniable, isn't it? Innovation today is so deeply, inextricably intertwined with digital technologies.
Yeah.
I mean, the digital revolution isn't just happening in the background, it's actively reshaping the very fabric of how open innovation works, how it adapts, expands, and leverages totally new possibilities.
Absolutely. We're moving into a realm where the lines between, the physical and the digital, and even between human and machine intelligence are becoming increasingly blurred.
Yeah, and the handbook explores this exciting world of digital commons ecosystems. What are those exactly?
These are situations where firms often adopt what they call an open-first approach, especially for new foundational general-purpose technologies.
Open first, meaning
instead of trying to tightly control every single aspect of a new technology right from the start, they intentionally open up certain components, specifications, or interfaces. Why? To foster broader ecosystem development around it and really accelerate adoption.
Can you give an example?
Well, the classic example is the Linux operating system. It's astonishing it powers something like over 90% of the public cloud infrastructure today. That demonstrates the absolutely pervasive success of open source models, especially in critical digital layers.
Wow, okay.
Another really compelling, more recent example is RISC-V. This is an open source computer architecture. It actually started as a university project, but now it's seriously challenging incumbents like ARM. How? By mobilizing this huge ecosystem of thousands of organizations, including tech giants like Google and Facebook, all building on this open standard.
So openness is disrupting hardware too.
Massively. It powerfully illustrates how open technologies, particularly in those lower foundational layers of digital infrastructure, can really disrupt established dominance. And interestingly, it can even bolster national technological sovereignty by democratizing access to these crucial building blocks. Anyone can use RISC-V.
Okay, now here's where it gets, for me, truly mind-bending. Artificial intelligence. We've usually thought of innovation as this uniquely human thing, right? Creativity, problem solving. But can AI actually innovate? this feels like a question moving rapidly from science fiction straight into our current reality.
It really does. And the handbook points to this burgeoning and absolutely fascinating field right at the intersection of AI and innovation management.
What can AI do in this space?
Well, AI, particularly advanced machine learning and deep learning, has this unprecedented ability. It can scan and process truly vast amounts of external data, way more than any human team could ever handle, looking for subtle patterns, correlations, and even generating what some are calling non-human knowledge.
Non-human knowledge. What's that?
Insights that aren't readily perceived or synthesized by human thinking alone. AI can extract expert knowledge from complex data without needing specific human programming for every single insight. And this capacity, it can lead to truly distinctive competitive advantages.
How is it transforming the process?
It's starting to transform conventional innovation processes right across the spectrum, from that very fuzzy front end of idea generation where AI can identify latent pain points, maybe recognize unmet customer needs, even predict future needs with surprising accuracy.
Wow.
All the way through to things like product design, automated testing, and ultimately market launch strategies. AI is effectively extending or powerfully complementing human cognitive abilities within the innovation process itself.
Okay, so if AI is changing innovation at the firm level, what does this all mean for even bigger, more complex endeavors? Like tackling those huge, grand challenges that require deep technology innovations built on fundamental scientific breakthroughs. The complexity there is immense.
Yeah, that's another critical area. This isn't just about single companies or even single industries. It's often about global, multi-sector collaboration. And the handbook uses initiatives like Attract, which is funded by the European Commission, as a prime example here.
What does Attract do?
Its ambitious goal is to commercialize these deep technologies that were originally developed within big science research infrastructures. Think places like CERN, the Particle Physics Lab, or the European Southern Observatory with its giant telescopes.
Okay.
The aim is to systematically transition these highly specialized technologies from their basic science applications, like, say, highly efficient photocathodes developed for particle accelerators, into real-world commercial applications that create societal value. Maybe better smartphone cameras or more efficient solar energy generation.
Bridging the gap from lab to market.
Exactly. But for deep tech, that gap, the valley of death, is notoriously wide and difficult to cross. It requires a profound rethinking of traditional commercialization paths. And it absolutely necessitates unprecedented collaboration among the scientific researchers, specialized deep tech investors, and the broader business communities. Open innovation mechanisms are vital for making those connections happen.
So your future thinking, as a researcher looking at this, it really needs to focus on this intersection, doesn't it? How will these rapidly advancing digital technologies, from open source software stacks to AI discovering new materials to platforms connecting big science with industries, how will they fundamentally reshape the boundaries of innovation? And how will they create entirely new opportunities for collaboration involving both human ingenuity and artificial intelligence? The digital frontier is just constantly expanding, and with it, the possibilities for open innovation seem truly boundless. You know, open innovation isn't just a powerful strategy for, say, boosting company profits or grabbing market share. It's increasingly being leveraged to tackle some of the world's really big, pressing problems, what the handbook broadly calls grand challenges.
Right, these huge global systemic issues, they're just too vast, too complex for any single organization or even any single nation to solve all by itself.
Things like climate change, pandemics, poverty.
Exactly, and this involves applying those open innovation principles, purposeful knowledge flows, collaboration across boundaries to these global issues, like achieving net zero emissions, which aligns perfectly with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. The demand for efficiently deploying knowledge, getting resources to the right place across incredibly complex institutional landscapes. You've got private firms, nonprofits, local communities, government agencies, all needing to work together. It's just immense.
So it requires a highly distributed innovation process.
It does, where those purposeful knowledge flows are managed across permeable organizational boundaries, not just for competitive advantage anymore, but for genuine collective societal benefit. The goal really shifts from purely proprietary gain towards shared planetary well-being.
Okay, but that raises a really important practical question. What are the actual concrete challenges in using open innovation for something as absolutely monumental as deep decarbonization? And how are leading companies really trying to approach it? What makes it so hard?
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. The handbook identifies several key hurdles to achieving deep decarbonization, which pretty much necessitates an open innovation approach. First, there's just the immense challenge of getting a truly detailed understanding of emissions across a company's entire boundary. Scope 1, their direct emissions. Scope 2, from the energy they buy. And crucially, Scope 3, all the other indirect emissions up and down their value chain. It's really hard. Just measuring it is hard. Hugely hard. Second, there's the challenge of developing, adopting, and then scaling up breakthrough low-carbon technologies globally, quickly enough. Third, it requires unprecedented collaboration across entire value chains to collectively reduce emissions, not just optimizing within one company's wall.
Right, involving suppliers, customers.
Everyone. And fourth, it means building viable carbon removal markets for those residual emissions that simply can't be eliminated through other means. It's a massive undertaking.
But are companies actually using open innovation for this?
The good news, as the handbook notes, is yes. Leading firms are already leveraging open innovation, particularly for things like target setting and measurement. They're actively exchanging data, sharing knowledge and best practices, trying to work towards standardized systems. And they're using joint pledges and collaborations to increase commitment. This can even create powerful industry-wide expectations and drive collective action.
That's encouraging. Does the handbook give some specific examples that bring this to life? How open innovation tackles these grand challenges?
It does, and they're really compelling. Take Carlsberg again, with their ambitious development of the green fiber bottle.
Right, the paper bottle.
As we touched on, this wasn't a simple internal R&D project at all. It explicitly required that whole innovation ecosystem approach, going way beyond just direct collaboration. It involved diverse innovators, orchestrators, complex IP management. It's a great example of using outside-out, open innovation commercializing technologies that started outside Carlsberg's core competence to solve a shared industry problem, packaging waste.
Okay. Any others?
Another powerful example is KLM's Sky NRG initiative focused on sustainable aviation fuel. That involved a broad coalition, airlines, fuel producers, NGOs, governments. Or look at Microsoft making substantial purchases of CO2 removal services. This helps create a market and signals demand, encouraging innovation in that nascent sector. These all highlight the critical role of open innovation in tackling these incredibly complex, multi-stakeholder grand challenges. It's moving beyond just traditional transactional collaborations towards fostering genuine systemic change.
So your contribution to global issues,
Yeah.
as a new researcher, maybe the call here is to consider how your own research, even if its primary focus seems narrow, might actually contribute a piece to solving these grand challenges, perhaps through highlighting collaborative open approaches.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember, as the handbook implies, that the ethical considerations we talked about, fairness, trust, equitable value distribution, they become absolutely paramount in these kinds of sustainability-oriented collaborations. Ensuring benefits are shared broadly and the impacts are truly positive for everyone involved, not just the lead firms, is critical.
All right, if you're embarking on your research journey, you'll naturally want to know, okay, where does open innovation actually fit? Where does it sit within the broader established landscape of academic theory in management and innovation studies?
Right. It didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Exactly. And this particular section of the handbook, part 7, explicitly is absolutely crucial for grounding your understanding. It gives you that robust conceptual framework for your own work, helping you see beyond just describing the phenomenon itself.
It really does. And this section shows clearly how open innovation built upon, but also significantly extended earlier foundational work in firm-level innovation. Things like understanding the historical rise of corporate R&D labs or recognizing the importance of internal R&D capabilities.
So it has roots.
Deep roots. The handbook explains how the initial definitions of open innovation evolved over time. It moved from maybe a simpler idea of just combining internal and external ideas towards a much more sophisticated understanding of a distributed innovation process. One characterized by purposeful knowledge flows, they're managed, not accidental, across permeable organizational boundaries.
Permeable, not just open or closed.
Exactly. That evolution emphasized that firms actively control and manage these knowledge flows. They aren't just passive recipients of unintended knowledge spillovers from outside. It highlights that innovation is fundamentally this multiplayer, interactive game. And understanding this systems-level interactive approach has been really key to open innovation's theoretical development.
Now, what's truly fascinating here, I think, is that the handbook then goes even deeper. It starts looking at the micro-foundations of open innovation.
Ah, the individual level again.
Right. This isn't just about grand organizational strategy. It's about understanding the individual level behaviors, the cognitive processes, the psychological factors that actually underpin these large-scale organizational phenomena. It asks, what are the specific cognitive skills, the individual characteristics that enable effective open innovation at the human level?
Which raises a profoundly important question, especially for future research. How do individual employee characteristics, things like their knowledge diversity, maybe stemming from varied educational backgrounds or diverse work histories, how do these shape a firm's overall openness and its specific ability to succeed with open innovation?
Does the handbook offer clues?
It suggests, for example, that having greater diversity of educational backgrounds within an organization seems to positively relate to the firm's overall level of openness, presumably because it brings in a wider array of perspectives, different ways of problem solving.
Makes intuitive sense.
It does. But much more research is needed to explore precisely how employee diversity influences things like external search strategies, or that vital process of knowledge transfer between employees once external knowledge is brought inside. And it also revisits the not invented here syndrome, but frames it from this micro-foundational perspective, exploring how it's rooted in things like psychological ownership, or even a perceived threat to an individual's or a team's identity.
So given this new paradigm, this focus on flows and boundaries and individual skills, what kind of leader does open innovation truly require? And how do we actually study these complex phenomena in action, moving beyond just theoretical models or big surveys?
Good questions. The handbook explores the distinct cognitive skills needed for leaders driving both inbound and outbound open innovation. For inbound leadership bringing ideas in, it highlights the need for a high awareness of where relevant skills and knowledge reside out in the network, maybe in distant places, combined with strong absorptive capacity.
Absorptive capacity.
That's the firm's ability not just to identify brilliant external ideas, but to truly digest them, make them their own, internalize them, and actually put them to productive work inside the company. It's a critical capability.
Okay. And for outbound leaders?
For outbound leaders pushing ideas out, it's about a different cognitive skill. The ability to identify potential external uses for technologies developed internally, and understanding how to effectively translate and package that internal knowledge for external markets or partners.
Different mindsets required.
Very different. And the handbook also introduces this powerful practice theory lens for studying OI.
Practice theory.
Yeah. This perspective suggests that relying only on large-scale surveys of best practices often misses the subtle yet crucial nuances of how these practices are actually adapted and flexed in real time by individuals on the ground. True success often lies not in rigidly following some standardized formula, but in the improvisations, the adaptive praxis, the dynamic enactment of practices in the moment. And that's a really relatively underexplored area for future research studying OI as it's actually done.
Okay, so this section, part 7, it really provides you, the researcher, with the conceptual tools. Not just to describe open innovation, but to truly understand its underlying mechanisms, its profound implications at all these different levels, from individual thinking and psychology, right up to organizational adaptation and strategy.
Yeah, it helps you see how open innovation challenges and actively reshapes existing management theories, pushing the boundaries of what we understand about how firms innovate in today's world.
Okay, so if open innovation is fundamentally changing the way businesses innovate, what does this all mean for how we actually teach and learn about innovation today? How are universities, business schools, how are they adapting to prepare future leaders and researchers for this much more dynamic, interconnected environment?
That's a great point, and the handbook dedicates a really insightful chapter specifically to the evolution of innovation management teaching. It highlights a crucial trend. Instructors are increasingly opening up their classrooms.
Opening classrooms, how?
By directly engaging practitioners, bringing in real-world challenges, moving beyond purely theoretical courses. It describes a clear shift in pedagogical approaches.
Towards more hands-on stuff.
Exactly. More robust experiential learning programs that immerse students in actual industry challenges, often run in direct collaboration with companies. Or using sophisticated simulated projects that mirror real-world innovation processes.
Can you give examples? examples?
Sure. The book mentions things like HP Labs partnering with DreamWorks on complex video rendering challenges given to students, or Evonik Industries, a chemicals company, assembling a community focused on vacuum technology for students to tackle specific problems. These approaches aim to equip students with contemporary tools like design thinking, lean startup methodologies, emphasizing the value of rapid experiments, prototyping, getting feedback, all through direct real-world scenarios. It fosters a much more hands-on understanding of open innovation in action.
That sounds much more engaging than just lectures. Now, we often hear about the friction, right? The practical hurdles of making these academic theories work smoothly in the real world. Does the handbook offer a perspective from practitioners themselves, insights on navigating success day to day?
It does, and it's incredibly valuable. Marisol Menendez-Alvarez offers a practitioner's viewpoint, talking about what she calls the 3 dimensions of OI maturity: strategy, operations, and talent.
Okay. Strategy, operations, talent.
Yes. And she points to this fundamental tension between mind and heart that practitioners often face.
Mind and heart.
Meaning the tension between what the measurable results and key stakeholders demand right now versus what the long-term innovation strategy truly desires or needs. Navigating this requires constant alignment, constant communication, really skillful management within the organization.
That sounds challenging.
It is. And she suggests that many companies, even today, still fall into common traps. For instance, they might narrowly define innovation partners as only being startups, whereas the real need is often diversifying to include universities, government labs, even NGOs, a much broader range of potential partners.
Right. What's another trap?
Another big one is that deeply ingrained belief that you must control your IP tightly to make any profit. As we've discussed, that mindset can seriously hinder collaborative value creation and prevent companies from capturing immense value that might come from more distributed external sources. Her perspective really underscores that successful implementation is just as much about managing internal organizational change and mindset shifts as it is about engaging effectively with the outside world.
Okay, so what are the biggest, most stubborn hurdles that companies still face in trying to implement open innovation successfully, even with all this evolving knowledge? And maybe more importantly for our listeners, what research avenues does this open up for you, the new researcher?
The handbook addresses several common and persistent organizational obstacles. Things like companies just starting their open innovation journey unprepared, maybe jumping in too quickly without the right internal structures or capabilities, or implementing it in a really ad hoc, unsystematic way,
Leading
to inefficient engagement mechanisms. Firms struggle to recruit the right partners or to sustain productive relationships over time. Another huge obstacle is the pervasive problem of internal silos that hoard knowledge, what the handbook tellingly calls the multi-unit back-end problem.
The multi-unit back-end problem.
Yeah, it refers to things like internal rivalries between divisions, maybe misaligned incentives, or just sheer organizational inertia that impedes knowledge transfer between different parts of the same organization, even after valuable external knowledge has been successfully brought in. Getting external knowledge effectively connected to the internal business units where it's actually needed and can create value, that remains a profound challenge. Knowledge doesn't just automatically flow to where it's most useful.
That internal plumbing is critical.
Absolutely critical and often overlooked.
Okay, so this leads us right to the cutting edge. What's truly next for open innovation research? Where should new researchers maybe focus their efforts to make the most impact, to really advance the field?
Well, several key directions emerge. Future research definitely needs to link open innovation more deeply and systematically to other established management theories, move beyond its initial, maybe more phenomenon-driven emergence.
Give it stronger theoretical roots.
Exactly. It also needs to explore new contexts for value creation beyond just traditional technology products. Think about service ecosystems, data ecosystems, social innovation contexts. How does OI work there? We need appropriate metrics, too, for measuring impact at a systemic or ecosystem level, not just at the individual firm level.
Right, broader measures.
Critically, there's a significant need to rigorously examine failures. Why did promising models like Quirky's crowdsourcing platform or even P&G's famous Connect and Develop initiative, which saw great early success but then reportedly stagnated, why did they falter?
Learning from what didn't work.
Precisely. These cases powerfully illustrate that simply describing a new approach, like OI, isn't enough. Profound internal change, continuous adaptation, sustained strategic alignment, these are absolutely necessary for long-term success. And finally, future research should explore that permeable, increasingly malleable nature of firm boundaries. And what Herbert Strohan called the sciences of the artificial, by thinking about interfaces not as fixed walls, but as adaptable, engineerable designs. That opens up exciting new avenues for understanding and actively shaping openness.
Wow. We've really journeyed through this incredibly dynamic landscape of open innovation today, from its foundational principles, its history, right through to practical applications, the deep theories behind it, and these exciting future frontiers. It feels abundantly clear that understanding how ideas flow, how people connect across boundaries, and how organizations need to adapt, it's just more crucial than ever in our interconnected world.
Absolutely. And this conversation, it's really just been a glimpse, hasn't it, into the immense richness and depth packed into the Oxford Handbook of Open Innovation. It truly offers not just answers, but maybe more importantly, robust frameworks for asking deeper, more insightful questions as you embark on your own intellectual adventures and contribute to this really evolving and vital field.
We really hope this conversation has illuminated some exciting pathways for you, maybe sparked a new curiosity to explore these concepts further in your own work, whatever that may be. Remember, the world of knowledge, it truly is abundant. And perhaps the greatest joy is found in the discovery, the connection, and the sharing. What new boundaries will you help make permeable in your own pursuits? And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.
রিভাইজ অ্যান্ড রিসাবমিটে স্বাগত। আপনারা শুনছেন আমাদের উইকেন্ড বুক রিভিউ পর্ব। আমি নিকিতা
আর আমি পাভলভ।
একটা দারুণ গল্প বলি জেরক্স কোম্পানির। ওদের যে বিখ্যাত প্যালো অল্টো রিসার্চ সেন্টার ছিল না,
হ্যাঁ শুনেছি তো।
ওখানে একবার নাকি ৩৫টা প্রজেক্টের ফান্ডিং বন্ধ হয়ে গেছিল।
ওহ, তাই নাকি? তারপর?
কিন্তু মজার ব্যাপার কি জানেন, এর মধ্যে ৩০টার ক্ষেত্রেই জেরক্স বলল কর্মীদের এই প্রযুক্তি বাইরে নিয়ে যাও, নিজেদের কোম্পানি খোলো।
বলেন কি, নিজেদের টেকনোলজি বাইরে দিয়ে দিতে বলল? কেন?
কারণ এতে নাকি ল্যাবের বাজেট খালি হচ্ছিল, সেই টাকা ওরা মূল ব্যবসার অন্য নতুন প্রজেক্টে লাগাতে পারবে। মানে বাইরের আইডিয়াকেও কাজে লাগানোর একটা রাস্তা, তাই না?
একদম। এই যে বাইরের আর ভেতরের ধারণাকে মেলানো, এটাই কিন্তু ওপেন ইনোভেশন বা মুক্ত উদ্ভাবনের একটা মূল কথা।
ঠিক। আর আজ আমরা এই নিয়েই কথা বলবো, মানে প্রফেসর হেনরি চেসব্রো আর তার টিমের এডিট করা দ্য অক্সফোর্ড হ্যান্ডবুক অফ ওপেন ইনোভেশন বইটা নিয়ে।
হ্যাঁ, তবে এটা পুরো বইটার আলোচনা নয়, কিন্তু একটা সারসংক্ষেপ বলতে পারেন। বইটা আসলে বেশ বড় আর ডিটেলড।
আর এটা মূলত কাদের জন্য লেখা?
এটা লেখা হয়েছে মূলত গবেষকদের কথা ভেবে, বিশেষ করে যারা এই ফিল্ডে নতুন গবেষণা শুরু করছেন। এতে না ছোট ছোট অধ্যায়ে থিওরি আছে, কেস স্টাডি আছে, আবার যারা ইন্ডাস্ট্রিতে কাজ করেন, মানে প্র্যাকটিশনার, তাদের অভিজ্ঞতাও আছে।
আমাদের এই আলোচনাগুলো তো একটা ঝলক মাত্র, তাই একটা কথা বলি, এই চ্যানেল সাবস্ক্রাইব করুন বা নাই করুন, আসল বইটা পড়ার জন্য একটু সময় বের করে নেবেন প্লিজ। লিঙ্কটা আমরা শো নোটসে দিয়ে দিয়েছি।
হ্যাঁ, বিশেষ করে যারা গবেষণা জগতে নতুন পা রাখছেন, তাদের জন্য এটা খুব দরকারি হতে পারে।
আচ্ছা, তাহলে বইয়ের শুরুতে কি আছে, মানে একদম প্রথম অংশে?
বইয়ের একেবারে গোড়ায়, মানে প্রথম অংশে, ওপেন ইনোভেশন জিনিসটা আসলে কি, কেন এটা জরুরি, সেটার ভিতটা তৈরি করা হয়েছে।
মানে বেসিক কনসেপ্টগুলো।
হ্যাঁ, সময়ের সাথে এর ধারণাগুলো কিভাবে পাল্টেছে সেটাও আছে। যেমন ধরুন, আগে ভাবা হতো হয় শুধু ভেতরের আইডিয়া কাজে লাগাও, নয়তো বাইরের আইডিয়া আনো, কিন্তু এখন জোর দেওয়া হয় জ্ঞান প্রবাহ বা নলেজ ফ্লোজের ওপর।
জ্ঞান প্রবাহ মানে?
মানে বাইরে থেকে আইডিয়া ভেতরে আনা, যেটাকে বলে ইনবাউন্ড, আবার ভেতর থেকে আইডিয়া বা প্রযুক্তি বাইরে দেওয়া, মানে আউটবাউন্ড।
ও আচ্ছা।
আবার দুটোই একসাথে করা, মানে কাপলড। পুরোনো দিনের যে ক্লোজড মডেল ছিল, যেখানে সব নিজেরা করার চেষ্টা হতো, তার থেকে এটা বেশ আলাদা।
ইন্টারেস্টিং। তার মানে ফোকাসটা শুধু কোম্পানির লাভের চেয়েও জ্ঞান আদান প্রদানে বেশি। আচ্ছা, তাহলে ব্যক্তি পর্যায়ে, মানে যারা কাজ করেন কোম্পানিতে, তাদের ওপরের কি প্রভাব?
ঠিক এই প্রশ্নটাই বইয়ের দ্বিতীয় অংশে অ্যাড্রেস করা হয়েছে। ওপেন ইনোভেশনের যুগে না, কর্মীদের ভূমিকাও বেশ বদলে যাচ্ছে।
কি রকম?
ধরুন, কিছু লোক থাকেন যারা বাইরের জগতের সাথে কোম্পানির একটা ব্রিজ তৈরি করেন। এদের গেট কিপার বা অ্যাসিমিলেটর বলা যেতে পারে। এরাই বাইরের নতুন জ্ঞান বা টেকনোলজি ফিল্টার করে কোম্পানির ভেতরে নিয়ে আসেন। এদের গুরুত্ব কিন্তু অনেক।
আচ্ছা আচ্ছা।
বইটা বলছে এদের ঠিকঠাক চিনে নেওয়া, সাপোর্ট করা খুব জরুরি। আবার ওপেন ইনোভেশন কিন্তু কর্মীদের কেরিয়ারেও নতুন সুযোগ খুলে দেয়।
বুঝলাম। ব্যক্তি পর্যায় থেকে তাহলে একটু বড় স্কেলে যায় সংস্থা পর্যায়ে কোম্পানিগুলো নিজেদের মধ্যে কিভাবে কাজ করে এই মডেলে।
বইয়ের তৃতীয় অংশটা এই নিয়েই। সংস্থাগুলোর মধ্যে কোলাবোরেশন বা সহযোগিতার নানা ধরন আছে, যেমন ধরুন অ্যালায়েন্স বা জোট বাঁধা,
হ্যাঁ ওটা তো জানি,
বা অ্যাক্সেলারেটর প্রোগ্রামের মাধ্যমে নতুন স্টার্টআপদের সাহায্য করা। কর্পোরেট ভেঞ্চারিংও আছে। একটা মজার কনসেপ্ট হলো কোঅপারেশন।
কোঅপারেশন মানে কম্পিটিশন আর কোঅপারেশন একসাথে।
ঠিক ধরেছেন, মানে প্রতিদ্বন্দ্বী কোম্পানিগুলো কিছু কিছু ক্ষেত্রে একসাথে কাজ করতে পারে, হয়তো পরিবেশ বান্ধব কোনো টেকনোলজি তৈরিতে। তবে এই সব সম্পর্কে বিশ্বাস আর নৈতিকতাটা খুব ভাইটাল।
তা তো বটেই। আচ্ছা, তার মানে ব্যাপারটা কি শুধু দুটো কোম্পানির মধ্যে সীমাবদ্ধ, নাকি আরও বড় পরিসরেও কাজ করে?
না না, আরও বড় পরিসরে। চতুর্থ আর পঞ্চম অংশ এটাই দেখায় যে ওপেন ইনোভেশন কিভাবে একটা কোম্পানির গণ্ডি ছাড়িয়ে পুরো ইকোসিস্টেম জুড়ে কাজ করে।
ইকোসিস্টেম বলতে?
ইকোসিস্টেম মানে শুধু কোম্পানি নয়, তার সাথে জুড়ে থাকা সব পক্ষ, পার্টনার, সাপ্লায়ার, গ্রাহক, এমনকি প্রতিদ্বন্দ্বীরাও একসঙ্গে নতুন ভ্যালু তৈরি করতে পারে। এছাড়া আঞ্চলিক ক্লাস্টার, শহর, বিশ্ববিদ্যালয়, এমনকি হেলথ কেয়ার বা সায়েন্সের মতো নির্দিষ্ট সেক্টরেও এর প্রয়োগ আছে।
বাহ, এখানে কি ক্রাউডসোর্সিং বা প্ল্যাটফর্মের মতো ব্যাপারগুলোও আসে?
একদম। ক্রাউডসোর্সিং মানে অনেকের কাছ থেকে আইডিয়া বা সলিউশন নেওয়া, বা বিভিন্ন ডিজিটাল প্ল্যাটফর্মের ভূমিকাও এখানে খুব গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হয়ে উঠছে।
তার মানে তো এটা সামাজিক সমস্যা সমাধানেও কাজে আসতে পারে।
অবশ্যই। ষষ্ঠ অংশটা ঠিক এই নিয়েই। যেমন ধরুন নেট জিরো কার্বন এমিশনের লক্ষ্য পূরণ বা অন্য বড় সামাজিক চ্যালেঞ্জগুলো মোকাবেলায় ওপেন ইনোভেশন দারুণ হেল্প করতে পারে। অনেক কোম্পানি এখন একজোট হয়ে কাজ করছে।
গ্রেট। এরপর কি থিওরির দিকে যাওয়া হয়েছে?
হ্যাঁ, সপ্তম অংশে ওপেন ইনোভেশনকে অন্যান্য প্রতিষ্ঠিত থিওরি যেমন স্ট্র্যাটেজি বা এন্টারপ্রেনারশিপের সাথে মেলানো হয়েছে। এর একদম ভিত্তিস্তরে ব্যক্তি বা টিমের আচরণ কিভাবে প্রভাব ফেলে সেই মাইক্রো ফাউন্ডেশনসগুলো দেখা হয়েছে।
আর অষ্টম অংশ, ওটা কি ভবিষ্যৎ নিয়ে?
কিছুটা তাই। অষ্টম অংশে ডিজিটাল কমন্স মানে সবার জন্য খোলা ডিজিটাল রিসোর্স, ওপেন সোর্স সফটওয়্যার, এআই, বিগ সায়েন্স, এই সব ক্ষেত্রে ওপেন ইনোভেশনের সম্ভাবনা নিয়ে আলোচনা করা হয়েছে।
তত্ত্ব তো অনেক হলো, কিন্তু বাস্তবে এটা প্রয়োগ করতে গেলে কি করতে হয়? চ্যালেঞ্জ কি আসে?
নবম অংশটা ঠিকই প্র্যাকটিক্যাল দিকটা নিয়েই। মানে বাস্তবে ওআই চালু করতে গেলে কোম্পানির ভেতরে কি বদলাতে হয়, কর্মীদের মাইন্ডসেট, নতুন প্রসেস তৈরি করা। এখানে প্র্যাকটিশনারদের অভিজ্ঞতা থেকে শেখার ওপর জোর দেওয়া হয়েছে। আর বিজনেস মডেলের সাথে এর সম্পর্কটাও খুব জরুরি।
বুঝলাম। আর বইয়ের একদম শেষে কি আছে, বিশেষ করে নতুন গবেষকদের জন্য?
হ্যাঁ, দশম আর শেষ অংশটা হলো টিচিং আর ফিউচার রিসার্চ নিয়ে। মানে বিজনেস স্কুলে বা ইউনিভার্সিটিতে ওআই কিভাবে শেখানো যেতে পারে, আর এই ফিল্ডে ভবিষ্যতে গবেষণার সুযোগ কোথায়। যারা গবেষণা শুরু করছেন তাদের জন্য এটা একটা রোড ম্যাপের মতো হতে পারে যে কোন দিকে আরও কাজ করা যায়।
তার মানে সব মিলিয়ে বলাই যায়, যারা একাডেমিক রিসার্চের জগতে নতুন বা নিজের পথটা খুঁজছেন তাদের জন্য এই হ্যান্ডবুকটা একটা দারুণ স্টার্টিং পয়েন্ট হতে পারে।
একদম। ওপেন ইনোভেশনের পুরো জগৎটাকে বোঝার জন্য এটা একটা শক্ত ভিত তৈরি করে দেয়।
তাহলে আজকের মতো আলোচনাটা এখানেই শেষ করি।
হ্যাঁ, তবে শেষ করার আগে একটা প্রশ্ন রেখে যাই সবার ভাবনার জন্য। আমরা এখন জলবায়ু পরিবর্তন, সামাজিক বৈষম্য, এরকম বিশাল সব চ্যালেঞ্জের সামনে দাঁড়িয়ে এগুলোর সমাধানে ওপেন ইনোভেশনের নীতিগুলোকে আরও বড় মাপে, আরও কার্যকরভাবে কিভাবে কাজে লাগানো যায়, এটা নিয়ে কিন্তু ভাবার অনেক জায়গা আছে, তাই না?
नमस्कार।
रिवाइज एंड रीसबमिट में आपका स्वागत है। मैं हूं पावलोव
और मैं हूं निकिता।
जेरोक्स की कहानी सोचिए। पालो आल्टो रिसर्च सेंटर में उन्होंने कोई 35 प्रोजेक्ट शुरू किए,
और हुआ क्या?
कई की फंडिंग रोक दी गई, और सबसे दिलचस्प बात, 30 मामलों में जेरोक्स ने अपने ही लोगों को कहा, ठीक है आप ये प्रोजेक्ट लेकर कंपनी छोड़ सकते हैं। अजीब लगता है ना? पर क्यों? क्योंकि जैसे ही वो लोग गए उनका बजट जेरोक्स के मेन काम में लग गया। तो ये दिखाता है कि कैसे अंदर के आइडिया भी बाहर जाकर वैल्यू बना सकते हैं। कभी कभी कंपनी के लिए यही बेहतर होता है।
हाँ बिल्कुल, ये ओपन इनोवेशन का एक बहुत अच्छा उदाहरण है, और आज हम इसी पर थोड़ी बात करेंगे। हमारी चर्चा एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण किताब पर आधारित है, द ऑक्सफोर्ड हैंडबुक ऑफ ओपन इनोवेशन। इसे प्रोफेसर हेनरी चेस्ब्रो और उनकी टीम ने संपादित किया है। बहुत बड़ा काम है ये। हम तो आज बस इसकी एक कह लीजिए झलक ही देख पाएंगे।
हाँ, ये किताब सच में बहुत बहुत गहरी है। हम तो यही कहेंगे कि अगर किसी को इनोवेशन में दिलचस्पी है तो इस ओरिजिनल किताब को पढ़ने के लिए ज़रूर वक्त निकालें। सब्सक्राइब करें या ना करें, पर पढ़ें ज़रूर। लिंक हमने शो नोट्स में डाल दिया है।
बिल्कुल। और देखिए, खासकर जो लोग एकेडमिक रिसर्च में नए हैं ना, उनके लिए इस हैंडबुक का स्ट्रक्चर समझना बहुत काम आ सकता है। एक तरह से ये पूरे फील्ड का नक्शा है। तो चलिए इसके जो मुख्य हिस्से हैं उन पर एक नजर डालते हैं फटाफट।
ठीक है, तो सबसे पहले आता है भाग 1, बुनियादी बातें। ये समझाता है कि ओपन इनोवेशन आखिर है क्या और क्या नहीं है। मतलब सिर्फ अपनी लैब में नहीं सोचना, बाहर से आइडिया लेना जिसे इनबाउंड कहते हैं, या अपने आइडिया बाहर जाने देना, वो आउटबाउंड, या फिर दोनों का मेल, कपल्ड मोड। ये पुराने वो दरवाजे बंद करके काम करने वाले मॉडल से कितना अलग है, ये समझना जरूरी है आगे के लिए।
सही कहा, बिल्कुल बेसिक चीजें। फिर दूसरा भाग जो है वो कंपनियों के अंदर देखता है कि ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के भीतर क्या होता है, लोगों की क्या भूमिका है। जैसे गेटकीपर होते हैं, ये वो लोग हैं जो बाहर की दुनिया से जानकारी, आइडियाज अंदर लाते हैं। दिलचस्प बात यह है कि छोटी कंपनियां, एसएमईज में अक्सर सीईओ ही ये काम कर लेते हैं, जबकि बड़ी कंपनियों में ये जिम्मेदारी शायद बंटी होती है। और ये भाग ये भी देखता है कि अलग अलग साइज की कंपनियां इसे कैसे अपनाती हैं।
अच्छा, तो ये अंदर की बात हो गई। पर इनोवेशन तो अक्सर अकेले नहीं होता है ना, लोग मिलकर करते हैं, कंपनियां मिलकर करती हैं। तो यहीं पर तीसरा भाग आता है। ये कंपनियों के बीच जो सहयोग होता है उस पर फोकस करता है। इसमें अलायंसेस यानी गठजोड़ की बात है, भरोसे का क्या महत्व है, नैतिकता, और एक बड़ा दिलचस्प कॉन्सेप्ट है कोपिटिशन।
हाँ, कोपिटिशन मतलब कोऑपरेशन भी और कंपटीशन भी। जब दो कंपनियां जो मुकाबला कर रही हैं वो किसी एक चीज पर सहयोग भी करती हैं, मान लीजिए किसी नई टेक्नोलॉजी का स्टैंडर्ड बनाने में, ये सब इसमें आता है।
बिल्कुल।
फिर चौथा भाग इस सहयोग को और बड़े लेवल पर देखता है, सिर्फ दो कंपनियों के बीच नहीं बल्कि पूरे इनोवेशन इकोसिस्टम की बात करता है। इसमें आजकल डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स का क्या रोल है, क्राउड सोर्सिंग मतलब भीड़ से आइडिया लेना, जैसे कोई डिजाइन कॉन्टेस्ट वगैरह, और वो जो बीच के लोग होते हैं, मध्यस्थ, जो ज्ञान के लेन देन को आसान बनाते हैं, उनकी भूमिका। तो ये दिखाता है कि इनोवेशन अब एक नेटवर्क का खेल ज्यादा है।
हाँ, नेटवर्क तो है ही, पर जगह भी मायने रखती है। पांचवा भाग इसी बारे में है, रीजनल क्लस्टर्स। मतलब क्यों किसी एक शहर या इलाके में एक खास तरह की इंडस्ट्री जम जाती है, जैसे सिलिकॉन वैली। शहरों की क्या भूमिका है, यूनिवर्सिटीज कैसे इनोवेशन हब बनते हैं, ये सब मुद्दे इसमें हैं।
बिल्कुल, जगह का अपना महत्व है। फिर छठा भाग वो भविष्य की ओर देख रहा है। इसमें कुछ बहुत नए और एक्साइटिंग टॉपिक्स हैं, जैसे डिजिटल कॉमन्स मतलब साझा डिजिटल रिसोर्स जिनका सब इस्तेमाल कर सकें, आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, एआई कैसे ओपन इनोवेशन को और बढ़ावा दे रहा है, तेज कर रहा है, और हाँ, जो बड़ी वैश्विक चुनौतियां हैं, सस्टेनेबिलिटी, नेट जीरो वगैरह, उनके लिए ओपन इनोवेशन कैसे काम आ सकता है। ये आजकल के हॉट टॉपिक्स हैं।
ये तो वाकई बहुत प्रासंगिक लग रहा है, खासकर एआई और सस्टेनेबिलिटी वाली बात। अच्छा, फिर सातवां भाग थोड़ा थ्योरी वाला है ना। ये ओपन इनोवेशन को स्ट्रैटेजी, इनोवेशन, एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप के जो स्थापित सिद्धांत है उनसे जोड़ता है, और एक और चीज पर फोकस है, माइक्रो फाउंडेशन।
हाँ, माइक्रो फाउंडेशन मतलब वो छोटी छोटी चीजें जो लोग व्यक्तिगत स्तर पर करते हैं, जैसे कोई इंजीनियर किसी दूसरी टीम से कुछ शेयर करता है, या कोई मैनेजर बाहर के किसी एक्सपर्ट से बात करता है। यही छोटी क्रियाएं मिलकर बड़े पैमाने पर ओपन इनोवेशन को चलाती हैं। ये उसकी जड़ें हैं एक तरह से।
समझ गई, मतलब बड़े सिस्टम की छोटी बुनियादें।
बिल्कुल। और फिर आखिर में आठवां और नौवां भाग, ये काफी प्रैक्टिकल हैं
जी।
इसमें बात होती है कि ओपन इनोवेशन पढ़ाया कैसे जाता है, केस स्टडीज क्या हैं, जो लोग इंडस्ट्री में काम कर रहे हैं, प्रैक्टिशनर्स, उनके क्या अनुभव हैं, क्या मुश्किलें आती हैं, सफलता को नापें कैसे, मेट्रिक्स क्या हों, और हाँ, असफलताओं से कैसे सीखें, ये भी जरूरी है। और भविष्य में रिसर्च के लिए क्या दिशाएं हो सकती हैं, इसके भी संकेत मिलते हैं।
तो कुल मिला के देखें तो ये हैंडबुक ओपन इनोवेशन का एक बहुत ही विस्तृत नक्शा पेश करती है। सिद्धांत से लेकर प्रैक्टिस तक, छोटी चीजों से लेकर बड़ी इकोसिस्टम तक सब कुछ कवर किया है। किसी को भी अगर ये विषय समझना है तो ये एक जबरदस्त शुरुआती बिंदु है।
निश्चित रूप से। और शायद अंत में सोचने के लिए एक सवाल छोड़ सकते हैं हम, सिर्फ शोधकर्ताओं के लिए नहीं, हम सब के लिए, कि हम अपनी खुद की प्रक्रिया में चाहे वो काम हो, सीखना हो, इस खुलेपन को कैसे अपना सकते हैं? क्या दूसरों के साथ थोड़ा जल्दी सहयोग करना, अपने आइडियाज़ थोड़े खुले तौर पे शेयर करना, अलग अलग नज़रिए सुनना, क्या इससे हमारे अपने काम या सीखने की रफ्तार और उसका असर बढ़ सकता है? ये सोचने वाली बात है।